You can configure how fields are being displayed in the admin form directly on the fields when you add them to a model, with things like editable equal to false. But if you need to do more advanced configuration, if you want to configure the overall form in which fields show up, and that maybe some fields should be pre-populated, then there is a different way of doing that. For that, you go to the admin.py file where you registered your book, and then in there, you can actually also create a new class. You can add a new class, which you typically give your model name, book, followed by admin with an uppercase A. This is not a must-use name, but a strong recommendation. Then this class should extend admin.modeladmin. And this is now a class which allows you to set various options through properties and fields which you add to this class, which then will be reflected in the admin page. Now, to make Django aware of your book admin class, which should configure administration for the book model, you pass it as a second argument to register. There you point at book admin, like this. And then for the moment, I'll just add pass here to avoid errors. With that, if I save it, nothing changes here. But now we can use this book admin class to set various settings, to override various properties in this class, which then will affect how this class is presented in the admin form and how it can be configured. For example, there you can add a read-only fields property, and you should get auto-completion by the IDE, which is quite convenient. And read-only fields takes a tuple where you simply list all the fields that should be read-only. And field here really means a field defined in your model. So if you want to make the slug read-only, you add slug here to this tuple. And also add a comma here to make it a tuple, of course. If you save that and you reload, now you see the slug is back. It's still not editable because editable is false and it's part of read-only fields, and the latter would suffice actually. We could now go to models and remove editable false. And with that removed, if I reload, it's still read-only because we added it to that read-only fields tuple. Now here you see it has the slug, it shows the slug which was auto-generated. But if I add a new book, I would like to see a preview here, so that if I add new story 4, I see a preview of the slug that will be generated. And that's another thing we can configure through that book admin class now. There you can add the pre-populated fields value. And that takes a dictionary where the key holds the field name that should be pre-populated. So in this case, slug again. And again, that has to be a field name from your model. So I'll go with slug. And then as a value for that field, you have a tuple listing all the fields that should be used for pre-populating this field. And in my case, I want to pre-populate the slug based on title, because that's what I'm also doing here in save. I'm slugifying the title. So here I'll then add title, the title field name. And you always add those field names as strings here because you just want to give Django the name of the field that should be used. And add a comma to turn this into a valid tuple. Now, how does Django know how to pre-populate this field? Well, it has a look at the field type, and if that is slug field, as it is in the case of slug, it will simply call slugify under the hood. Now, if I save this and I reload this page here, I get an error. Key slug not found in book form. Choices are author, is bestselling, rating, and title. Now, what's the problem here? The problem is that slug is also added as a read-only field, which means it can't be edited. For pre-populated fields to work, you need to remove it from the read-only fields, and then reload, and then the slug is back, and now you see it gets filled out automatically as I enter a title. Now we could still change this if we want to, but I'm still overriding it anyways once we save. Though you could, of course, now consider removing this line here in the save method and getting rid of the overwritten save method altogether, therefore, since it doesn't do anything else than this line here, because we're now pre-populating it in the form anyways, and therefore we might be fine with sticking with that pre-populated value. And we might want to allow the user to overwrite this anyways, because of course sometimes the auto-generated slug might not be what we want, and giving the user the possibility to overwrite this to a value that better suits his or her needs might be nice to have. You also don't have to worry that the user might then enter something invalid like this, which would not be a valid slug, because if you try to save this, you get a validation error. Because this Django admin form has this built-in validation, which we saw before already, based on your model. It has a look at your model field types and adds appropriate validation rules. Of course, also taking validators like this into account. So this admin interface really has got you covered and gives you a lot of flexibility. And therefore, I will go ahead and remove this save method, since we really don't need it anymore now that this is being pre-populated, and gives me a chance of securely editing this to a valid value.